It's the Down Beach Buzz podcast for July 10, 2025. It's all powered. The Down Beach Buzz podcast powered by Sherry Lilienfeld of eXp Realty. Whether it's buying or selling, maybe it's residential, maybe commercial. Nobody does it better than Sherry. Go to realtysherry.com. The Down Beach Buzz podcast also powered by Paul Skolage of rate.com. He's the Senior VP of Lending, Mortgages, Refinance. Get a rate quote. Reach out to Paul Skolage of rate.com. All right, Sherry Lilienfeld, it's July 10, a very big, momentous day because Governor Phil Murphy signed into law, maybe a tax. He's going to make life tougher for buyers and sellers, maybe even realtors, a new a real estate transfer tax. Tell us all about that.
Okay, well, this is a big day, and people are going to be shocked if they haven't already heard about this. So it's called the realty transfer fee increase. So what happened is there's always been a real estate transfer tax that the seller paid. And a lot of people are familiar with what we call the mansion tax. If you bought a property over $1 million, it was called the mansion tax, which is a supplemental real estate fee. But the reason for this higher real estate transfer fee is because the new Jersey budget. Governor Murphy's going out, and he wants to be sure there's this huge amount of money left in the pot when he leaves. So there's a number of ways he's going to get this revenue. One is the higher real estate transfer fees on higher value sales. And I'm going to go into detail on what this means because it's more than 1% now. It's a lot more. He's also getting money or proposed getting money from online gaming, sports betting, tax hikes, expanded sales tax into more goods and services, and increases on cannabis, alcohol, cigarettes, firearms fees, and landline cell phone surcharges. Boy, like everything we do to have fun, right? Online gaming and sports betting and cannabis and alcohol. Now we're going to be paying more for these things. But the big one, obviously, is the real estate tax. Anyway, do you have any questions so far, or should I keep going here?
You're doing perfect. Just keep it going with this transfer tax. At one time, was it called the mansion tax? I'm confused. Can you simplify all this stuff for us, Sherry, please?
Yeah. So in 2004, Governor McGreevey, remember him? He's the one that added this. Yeah, you're going, huh?
He had an interesting time in office, Governor McGreevey.
Yeah. So anyway, it was 2004 already. It was 21 years ago when any properties that sold over $1 million, he added a supplemental fee of 1%. That's on top of the transfer tax. And the supplemental fee is paid by the buyer. So when the buyer's buying something over $1 million, they're paying an extra 1%. That's was a cost to them, but the seller still also had their transfer tax. So it was kind of split. But now, and this was approved, this is in effect today. I cannot emphasize this more. This isn't just hypothetical. This is today. It is now in effect. Any property going under contract now, these are the new numbers. So anything from $1 million to just $1 less than $2 million is still 1%. But guess what? $2 million to basically, $2.5 million, less than 2.5, we have 2%. So that like doubled if you go from 2 million to basically 2.5. So then from 2.5 to 2.99999, now you're up to 2.5%. And then 3 million, it's 3%. And then anything over 3.5 million and above, it's 3.5%. Now, the big thing too is not only are these fees so much more than they were, because this was all a straight 1%. You're over $1 million, it was 1% paid by the buyer. This is now to be paid by the seller. Okay, so the buyer is not paying them. These are costs to the seller for selling your home in New Jersey. So let's just take an example. Let's say you like my example. Let's
It's
say you have
important
a
because people know about percentages, but when you tell them that they're going to pay an extra 90 grand just
That's right.
because, you got to
That's
give us some of those examples. If somebody bought something for 1.1 million or 2.1 million, give us some examples of real hard cash numbers.
Well, let's use your 90 grand number. If somebody bought or someone sold their property at 3 million, they're paying the real estate transfer tax. It's already there. And on top of that, an additional 3%. This is a supplemental real estate fee. This is on top of the real estate transfer tax. And $3 million house at 3%, that's an extra $90,000 in cost, or, reduce profit to the seller.
All right, so come on, tell me, add both of those numbers together. So there's taxes, two different taxes. So when somebody just bought a $3.1 million home, what are they outlaying when you combine both of those surcharges, if you will?
Okay, so the real estate transfer tax is around 1%. There's a formula for it. It's kind of complicated. I didn't actually do the calculation, but let's just say it's about 1%. So they're paying $30,000 plus another $90,000. That's $120,000. And don't forget, if they had a real estate agent involved, they're paying their realtor for handling the transaction.
So you're saying that someone's going to pay an extra 120 grand if they just sold their $3.5 million home?
Well, actually, if it's 3.5, I was using 3 million. If it's
Okay, so
3.5,
let's use 3 million, because people hear percentages, but what's really going to kick them in the you know what is the actual outlay. So it's a $3.1 million home. What's the total additional charge that Governor Phil Murphy is going to force, by law, sellers to hand over?
So let's say it's a $3 million home. They're going to pay an extra $90,000 because they were already paying the real estate transfer fee. The seller was already paying that, like, let's say it's about 1%. They're paying, the seller's paying. So before, the buyer was paying the mansion tax and the buyer was paying 1% because it was a straight 1%. So before, the buyer was paying $30,000 to buy that house, but now they moved it from the buyer to the seller and it's 3%. They moved it. So the buyer's not paying it.
It's still a lot of money going to the state and probably into the general fund. I think we talked about what will this money be used for, and it's just going to go into surplus, right?
Exactly. So again, one of the reasoning behind the surplus, the general fund, is because of fear that federal funds are going to be cut so that there's money for things when they get caught. And the budget focuses on like education and also there's a lot in it about seniors, helping seniors and their costs with housing. So you're basically moving, helping seniors with housing and lower income people with housing, more affordable housing, and you're taxing the rich. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're taxing the people in expensive homes. So, yeah, but again, the big shift is going from the buyer to the seller. So it's great news for the buyer. The buyer's not paying that 1% anymore, but the seller is looking at reduction of their net profit on their homes when they sell it. And I have to tell you, when we go to list on a listing appointment, there's something called a net sheet. They're always going to say, what are my costs for selling? And, what's the net sheet? And we sit down and we talk about all their costs, the real estate transfer fee. Now we have to add this supplemental realty transfer fee, the real estate commission. Those are the big costs in for the seller. For the buyer, I mean, their big cost was, their home inspection and settlement costs, which is not really a lot.
So what is your guess? How is it going to affect the real estate market? How's it going to affect transactions? Will it slow down home sales and purchases? We don't know yet, but what's your guess?
So we were already seeing a little bit of a flattening of the market, in terms of pricing, right? We've talked about the price reduction. Look, let's be realistic. Let's look at the big picture. Houses have doubled or sometimes tripled in our area. And when people have to drop their price a little, they're still making a nice profit from if they bought their home a few years ago. Like, people have to say, "Oh my God, like I'm dropping the price 20,000." Well, your house doubled. Like, let's say, you're still have great appreciation of your home. So you have to look at the net picture. But I think that sellers, of course, are going to try to say, well, if I have to pay that, I'm not going to negotiate it as much on my price. I'm going to stick to my price because now I have this cost. And I do think so. We've also been seeing sellers paying the buyer's agent fee a lot. Like, even though we had this law change last year where buyers are supposed to pay a buyer's agency fee, we still see a lot of sellers paying it. That is negotiated in the offer. I think that they might be less inclined to pay the buyer's agency fee. So even though the buyers aren't paying the mansion tax, but now they're going to be asked more heavily to pay the real estate agent. So that's what I see as the change.
How will it affect other realtors? How do you think the realtor community is going to react? And are they even talking about it? Does the average person know, especially in Margate and Ventnor and Longport, where real estate's a big, big deal? How many people on the island know about the big change today? Sherry Lillienfeld of EXP Realty.
I think people might have heard about it, but the fact that it is in effect today, July 10th, 2025, I think people are going to be like, wow, because it happened really fast. Last month, as you know, on our podcast, I was telling people to send letters to their representatives, but it got voted on before the end of the month. And now it's in effect July 10th. That was fast. This happened fast.
Do you think there was a spike in activity over the past few days because they knew this was coming? Did you sense that at all? Somebody squeezing in last minute purchases or sales?
So I do have market numbers I could share on that. I think there were people looking, but I'll show you. Well, if I show you the market numbers, if we can add the slides. Yeah, thank you. Oh, wait, I just wanted to go to this and then I'll go into the market numbers. So homes over $1 million in 2024, it was 16% of all of New Jersey. So even though, yeah, we're in a really high real estate market, all of New Jersey is going to be, over 16% is going to be hit by this because in 2024, and prices have still appreciated, 16% of single family homes sold throughout the state cost over $1 million. So, yeah.
Yeah, there was a time when the word $1 million home was really like, wow, I don't know if my house would be $1 million, but now $1 million is incredibly common, and to see anything less than $1 million, especially in Margate, it's very rare. When you see something for $875, you're like, okay, what's the matter with it? But back in the day, that was a pretty solid, good buy to come into Margate.
I remember when my first time second home buyers, their price point was like $300,000 to $400,000. They're like, yeah, I'm ready to buy my first beach house, and my budget's 3 to 4. That was like the competitive price point. So now 800,000, that's a lot. I mean, a buildable lot if you're lucky. So, and I'm not
1 million. Yeah, 1 million. 1 million is just a common low end number down the shore in South Jersey. Prices have inflated that much because we don't really know what the true value of a home until somebody exchanges cash. But let's face facts, over the past few years with low interest rates, mortgage rates, and everybody moving and trying to get into the real estate investment entrepreneurial thing, prices went through the roof, and we're getting back to normal. It's really just getting back to a stable number, a real number, pre-scamdemic, maybe.
We're not getting back to pre-pandemic numbers. That's not happening. That's
All right.
not.
I just thought maybe we're in maybe stepping back a few steps, maybe.
But keep in mind, like I said, property values have doubled to tripled. So, okay, so let's say there's an adjustment of 10%. You're never getting back to those numbers. It's not happening.
So you have some numbers, and I'm thinking you're going to tell us how many homes on the market have seen price reductions. Do you have that, or give me
I'm
your
not doing
summary?
price.
Yeah.
I'm not doing
All
price
right.
reductions. I'm just kind of going really top line here.
Is that because you're not doing price reductions because it's boring to talk about how 40% of homes are reducing their price? About 40%?
I will say what I've been seeing a lot of. So the reason I'm not doing price reductions is because it's a research project. It's not just me looking at the listing and it's showing a price reduction.
What's your gut feeling?
Oh yeah, 40% to 50%.
We don't care about the numbers. We care about how you feel about this, Sherry Lilienfeld, because you naturally have this inside of you. So even though you're a numbers girl, I would just trust your off the cuff thoughts about it, while you're sitting by the pool. That, to me, that's more trustworthy.
Well, my off the cuff thoughts are based on the last time I dove deep into the numbers and found. So what I was saying is there's a lot of relistings. Right. So to find the price reductions, you have to really go into the history, which I've done in the past, as you know.
And what's a relisting?
Okay, you have a property listed at $3 million. You want to bring the price down to $2.5 million. So instead of just dropping the price, you withdraw the listing and then you list it again with a new MLS number. So it looks like a fresh new listing, but it's not a new listing. It's a relisted property.
So what does that really mean? Why would a realtor want to do that?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. Again, because the listing doesn't show up as stale. So
can you do me a favor? Your lustrous, luscious, soft and awesome red hair is getting in front of the microphone. Could you just flip it back a little? Careful. Yes. Your hair looks awesome. Yes.
Better.
Yes. Go ahead. So why would a realtor want to take it off the market and then relist it with another MLS number?
So, it's interesting because it used to be that when they list it with the new MLS number, well, first of all, what is still the case is new MLS number, anyone that has a search set up, let's say you have a property listed at 3 million, anything listed 3 million or less that you're doing a search on, if a property is newly listed, it will show up on someone's feed. You will get a listing notification. If a price changes, you will get a listing notification. That is the way our MLS works. So one reason to do a new listing is so someone gets a notification. But what I was saying is in the old days, people were not able to tell if there was a history behind it, the relisting. But now you can see that history. You can see that on Zillow and all that. Like you get all that. So it doesn't have as much of the same benefit, I don't think, because people are very astute. They have the data. They can see you relisted. They see, I'll call it the game for lack of a better word. They see that that's what's happening. But still, there's this philosophy that you don't want to show days on the market of 180 days. So you will pull it off the market and put in a fresh new listing with a fresh new price.
So my assumption is that this is just one of the many reasons that people need to have an independent buyer's agent representing them, because they sniff around to find out all the stuff that maybe the average home buyer wouldn't really think about. So this is proof that you really better be properly represented when you're searching for a home. And things are getting very interesting because the prices are more attractive. There's more coming online inventory wise. So don't think it's going to be easy. You still need a buyer representative. Please do that. Please.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, you need a buyer's representative. And also, as we've mentioned in a previous podcast, even though there's a price when you're doing comps. So when you want to make an offer, you want to look at the comparables. You want to see what else is sold and the price it's sold. But again, there's ways to manipulate the comps, and it's nothing illegal. There's nothing wrong with it. But let's say it's a house that has been exquisitely furnished with very high-end furnishings. There could be a couple $100,000 of furnishings that were purchased separate from the sale price, which all goes into the whole price of the property. So there's a lot of factors that come into play.
And then they might have upgraded the kitchen, and then sometimes, Sherry, there's a delay. When it gets recorded, the actual transaction price gets recorded at the county level. That could take months and months. So when you're doing your due diligence as a buyer's rep and you are looking at the comparables, sometimes you won't be able to see what did it transact for at the county level because it didn't get there. You'd have to make some phone calls directly to an agent, things of that sort, right?
Yeah, and that's why you want a local agent that has relationship with the other local agents or who's ever selling the properties in the area. I mean, I personally had owned a property in Sea Isle City. I'm a licensed realtor. I could easily buy and sell properties on my own with my license in Sea Isle. But I used a local realtor to sell my property because I understood the value of someone that is in that market. They know all the agents. They know the market inside out. Yes. Could I have sold my own property? Of course. Could I have listed it? Of course. I'm licensed in all of New Jersey. But even me, I was happy to pay another agent to help me get the best price for my property.
The one thing that fascinates me the most about the real estate industry, especially down the shore, is that price, the true market value of a home. There's a lot of different ways of skinning that cat, but I just think that we don't talk about that very often. We just talk about, oh my God, I got a great house, but there's taxes involved, HOA fees, assessments. It's something that is it's getting bigger and more hairy by the moment. So I got some construction going on, so I'm going to let Sherry continue.
Okay, I need these slides up there. Thank you. Okay, so Margate, there wasn't much of a change in the number of listings from last month. It went from 54 to 56. I thought it was interesting that the median price of the listing. So we're seeing more homes under 2 million come on the market, which is great because there's a lot of buyers in that price range under 2 million. But what went under contract, the median price went up. It's around the same number last month to this month. So it's not bad, 7, 8 properties going under contract since the summer began. The median price went up a little bit. There were a few like $3 million properties that went under contract in the last month, which I was happy to see. But Ventnor has an interesting story. So Ventnor, the number of listings is coming up and the median price is going down. But here's the story. Here's the part that I thought was interesting. What went under contract from last month in Ventnor, there are 4 listings, and look at the price point here. That's like crazy, $584. That must have been.
Why is that crazy?
Because you can't get a nice house at that price. Those were tear down, for the most part. Oh, and actually, I take that back. A number of them were up in Ventnor Heights. They were, really, they weren't anywhere near a second home. They were up in Ventnor Heights. So we saw 4 homes last month, but then it jumped up to 10 properties in Ventnor. For some reason, Ventnor took off last month, and the median price was $1 million. Again, there are a number of homes like $2-3 million that went under contract in Ventnor. So yeah, like I said, I was just going to do a top line, like kind of what's happening. So Ventnor seemed to be the point of focus last month, where Margate was a bit stagnant, still not bad. 8 homes went under market, under contract. Longport still, Longport's so small. It's hard to get any statistics here. Median price is 4.660 million. And you can't really look at this number, what went under contract, because there is no median price. One property went under contract, and that's going to change your median price. But that's what's happened in Longport. So that's my little story about the market. But real estate transfer tax, please be aware that sellers now paying those prices, what they're probably going to do is be a little less willing to negotiate on their price now that they have a higher cost to sell. And started today. Thank you, Governor Murphy.
I know that we don't have a lot of information on this, but I saw that Stone Harbor put in and submitted their affordable housing plan to Governor Phil Murphy, who seems to be involved deeply in real estate because he knows it's almost the lifeblood of the Jersey Shore. See, Ventnor put their plan in. I think Brigantine probably did, and Stone Harbor did. But for some reason, and I did Oprah request from the city of Margate, hey, do you guys submit your proposed affordable housing plan as per state statute? And I got a response that said no. And the downside, if you don't follow along and provide some type of affordable housing plan, it's always different. Every town has a different formula they kind of have to follow. But if they don't do anything, it says that a builder can come in and do whatever they want. It's called the builder's remedy. And if you go up to Down Beach Buzz, and you'll be able to hear Lance Landgraf, the commissioner of Ventnor, talk in detail about it. And Lance really does know about this stuff. He's a planner and a land use kind of guy. So what's your guess, Shara, why Margate is not submitting an affordable housing plan that has to be a part of their master plan? Why do you think that happened? Maybe we should ask our good friend, the very handsome Paul Scollett. What do you think, Paul?
I missed out on that. Tell me that question again.
Now, we were just spending all our time talking about world soccer, gold, 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 gold. And then you came up. So,
well, guys, I'm an avid soccer player, but it's a pretty bad sport to watch. I'll tell you what. I mean, it's not a good one to watch. I can play it. I'm actually going back home tonight to play in my over 40-year summer league tonight. So,
nice. You go, Paul.
I'm going back. I'm going to get the boots out. Look out.
So Paul Scollett of RateGut.com, is the real estate transfer tax, the mansion tax, all that stuff, and the affordable housing stuff, is that affecting your business as a mortgage guy?
Wow, it's amazing to me. I thought that Philadelphia was going to be the worst in the business when it comes to that transfer tax. Could you imagine selling a $3 million house and what that's going to do for the seller? I mean, it's awful. It really is. It's definitely going to be something that I think it's going to be managed into the deal at some point. They're going to figure that out, right? I mean, at some point, your price point's going to go up and the seller or the buyer is going to be putting offers in covering a portion of that transfer tax, is what we see here in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is 4.98% split. So we have buyers that are putting offers in saying that they will cover the seller's transfer tax up to 2.39%, which is bizarre. You're going to see it. That's the new norm.
Wow, that's crazy. We were just talking about, it's in effect today, July 10th.
Yeah.
I mean, this happened fast. And it's funny you said $3 million house, because that's the example we use. So we didn't pay you to say that. That was great.
All right, Paul, we got a question for you. Pop quiz. What would boost home sales more? Lower interest rates or lower home prices? Or do you need both?
No, I mean, lower home prices, without a doubt. I mean, people are buying with 8% interest rates, 7.5% interest rates. I think it's got to be the lower home prices, which will absolutely drive the market. However, I don't think that's possible. I don't think we'll see that. I do believe that the current administration is putting so much pressure on the Fed to lower rates. And it's just a matter of time before we start to see some type of relief. I mean, we're definitely seeing relief now compared to where we were. I mean, rates today are mid sixes. I mean, you can get a 6.5% rate or even 6.375 today with putting 30% down on a purchase.
But Paul, if Jay Powell continues to ignore 47,
yes,
and he says, no, I'm not lowering the rate, because there is first off, it doesn't immediately help mortgages. It really is about the 10-year bond. I've learned that from you and Sherry on the podcast over the years. So there's the greatest fear, I think, top of mind would be, wouldn't that cause inflation? Or what do you think?
In theory, you would think that they would align themselves together, but it's clearly not. I mean, inflation is kind of been flatlined. In some cases, it's coming down. Rates are coming down. I think the big scare was the tariffs at one point. That's kind of overblown, and it's just a matter of time. I don't think Powell really cares what 47 or 45 is doing right now, because he would have changed his mind before. I think it's just a matter of time. It will play itself out. Rates eventually will have to come down. My anticipation is probably, I would say, the spring of next year is when we'll start to see a great relief from what we're seeing today. But this is Powell's. I think this is his last go around. So at some point he's going to get a lot of pressure, and I don't think it's going to do anything detrimental to change his opinion today. But we will see relief at some point next year, the beginning of next year.
All right, you're with.
I do have to go. I'm sorry. I do.
It's
have
okay.
To go.
I was just going to talk about how awesome you are and talk about your hair color, the whole nine. But you have to go, so that's fine.
I have to go, but you can throw compliments to me anytime.
Yeah, we can do that still, right?
What?
We can still compliment you, right?
Yeah, you can still compliment. Thank you, though, and great. Yeah, thank you so much, and I will see you next time.
All right, bye,
Awesome.
Cher.
Thanks.
So Paul and I, one more question for you, Paul.
Sure.
You all done, Cher? Okay, there you go. How you doing, bud? So
like my shirt, I got the boat shirt. Oh well.
So what's out there fishing wise off the coast of beautiful Brigantine, New Jersey?
We start Monday with the Jimmy Johnson tournament here out of Atlantic City. So that's our big one here. We're looking forward to it.
That's big, yeah.
Getting everything prepped there this weekend. So it should be a good event. And it's always a good turnout. And I think right now they have 65 or 66 boats. So looking forward to it.
That's awesome, man. So the Down Beach Buzz podcast for July 10, 2025, powered by Sherry Lilienfeld of eXp Realty. Buy, sell, residential, whether it's commercial. Nobody does it better. Go to realtysherry.com. And the Down Beach Buzz podcast powered by this guy, Paul Scollage of rate.com. He's a senior VP of lending, mortgages, refinances. Maybe you want a rate quote. Maybe you just want to talk fishing with the guy. Whatever. Paul Scollage will take your call. Find him at rate.com. All right, Paul, I got a 30-year. I want to buy a house, and I want to get a 30-year fixed. I got really good credit. What can you do for me?
Yeah, I think right now, we're definitely starting to see improvement in rates. Anytime we see consistency where we have 3 or 4 to 5 days in consistent rate reduction is a good thing. We've definitely seen that over the last week or so. Right now, good credit, 30% down. You're looking at, like I said, 6.5 to 6.375. Definitely making progress from where we have been in the past. I think the future is bright. I think there's going to be a lot of refinance opportunities for us as we get into the fall of this year or the beginning of next year in terms of the spring, where we'll definitely, in my opinion, see a pretty vast rate cut. I mean, like you mentioned before, when the Fed cuts rates, it's not something that immediately impacts what we see. There's a timeline, right? So, the Fed cuts rates today, it could be 60 to 90 days before we start to see any vast improvement. So, I think kind of hang tight. I think we've been through the highs. I think that part is over. And I think as we move forward, we will start to see an increase in rate. But to that question before, I think lower home prices is what will drive the market. Unfortunately, I just don't see us seeing lower home prices.
Got another question that came in, some comments here on the Down Beach Buzz podcast with Paul Scollage of rate.com. Paul, can rental history from somebody who's been renting, can their rental history of paying on time, can that help someone get a mortgage? I'm seeing more of that being discussed. What do you think?
Wow, you must have just been reading my mind. So this came out yesterday. It's called 4.0. And it in the past, we didn't look at, or the industry didn't look at borrowers' rent history, right? And I think what the higher ups are looking at, they're saying is, if a borrower can make his rent payment on time for 2.5 years, why can't he make his mortgage payment on time for 2.5 years? So that history of rental will be impacted in what we see as we move forward. I don't know the exact timeline. I'll definitely have some more data as we talk next, but it's definitely something that is going to be impacted into a client's ability to repay. It will be something that we'll look at. And, as far as credit score, that'll also, I think, the industry has what's called credit score adjusters. So someone with a 780 is going to get a better interest rate than someone with a 740, right? I think those things are going to eventually change at some point. Someone with a 740 has a great pay history. Why is he getting a rate different than someone with a 780? So I think there's going to be changes in the industry as we move down the line.
How would you find out if that renter was paying on time? How would you even tap that data?
Because it's going to be implemented on their credit report as we move forward. Credit reporting systems in the past didn't have the ability to pull rental history. Going forward, their rental history will be on their credit report.
Does that mean they're reaching out to the...
If a client is renting from an industry like a not a one-off landlord, if they're renting from a larger corporation, that corporation is going to be able to report that borrower's rental history.
So it might be a little tougher for an individual landlord for you to tap
Agreed.
into that history between the renter and the rentee.
Yeah, that part I think is going to be challenging. So, for instance, I've owned rental properties in the past. Someone renting from me isn't going to be reporting on the credit report, right? Something from a larger corporation, a larger company, an apartment complex, that person will be able to have rental history based off of that development.
And that's good. That's a good data point for guys like you to give people more of an opportunity to afford a home.
Yeah, it's funny. I started now 17 years in this business, and there's never been anything called common sense underwriting, right? We're starting to see that more and more in this industry. And I think the future is bright. For instance, having rental history over the last 3 years of someone making their rent payment on time, in my opinion, is something that's valuable, right? So I think going forward, we will see some changes.
And this is really going to help first-time home buyers, right?
Without a doubt, right? So first-time home buyers are really, in my opinion, over the last year and a half, are really the only ones that took advantage of these lower interest rates, because there was a time that if you were a first-time home buyer, it's still today, rates are lower for first-time home buyer. Credit score wasn't a major impact for borrowers that being first-time home buyers. So, it's definitely changing. And I think if you are a first-time home buyer right now, it's still a great opportunity to buy. Rates are slightly lower for them. However, it's just a good opportunity.
As a mortgage guy, and you have one foot down the shore, one in the Philadelphia region, what are the key differences between how people reach out to you at rate.com and where are they getting their money to buy a second home, maybe a third home? Are they refinancing? Are they pulling out cash? Because typically people they're not cut and dry. They probably, let's take this for example. Somebody has a home in Bucks County, a seashore home in Brigantine, maybe Margate, and then a winter place down in Florida. That's kind of semi-common. That's not too uncommon. How do people deal with finances in a scenario like that, Paul?
Yeah, so a lot of people, if you have equity in your house, in your situation in Bucks County, the first thing is they're going to look to do a home equity line of credit or a cash out refinance. So you can take equity from your primary residence. You can borrow up to 80% of whatever your primary residence is worth, less your mortgage if you have one. So if you don't have a mortgage on your current property in Bucks County, you can borrow 80% of that appraised value. So, if you have a house that's worth $400,000, you can borrow up to $320,000 of that value. You can turn around and buy something cash down at the shore, or you can take that money and apply it as a large down payment to purchase something in the second home market, whether it's the beach or whether it's Florida. Interest rates, unfortunately, are elevated for second homes compared to primary residence. However, when you're putting that much money down on a property, so if you can get to 30% down or greater, the rate adjustments are not that significant for a second home. So, We definitely see a lot of second homes with 50% down. I'm closing one tomorrow in Brigantine. Borrower bought the top and bottom floor, and in both scenarios, he's putting down 35% on each unit. So it's a great opportunity if you have cash in your house. And remember, when you do a cash out refinance on your primary residence, there's tax implications that come into play, and there's a write-off that works in your advantage in doing something like that.
In your experience, Paul, from rate.com, are the builders offering to buy down points? Is that common down the shore?
So I don't know so much down the shore. What happens if you have a property sitting on the market, a builder has a property and it's sitting on the market, he can offer incentives, right, to be able to do what's called a 3-2-1 buy down or a 2-1 buy down. So what that does is that builder says, okay, we're going to give you $20,000 in a seller assist, and you can use that money for whatever you want. You can use it to reduce your closing costs, but we really want you to use it to do that 3-2-1 buy down. And what that means is, let's say today you're buying a property down the shore and your rate's 7%. The first year, it's 3% lower. So the first year, it's going to be from 6% to 3%. The second year, it's going to go from 3% to 4%. The third year, it's going to go from 4% to 5%. And then back into year 4, it's going to go to its original rate. And what that does is it gives the buyer the ability to be able to buy that property knowing that he's got a 3-year relief on his interest rate to lower his monthly payment. The thought process is when the Fed comes in and lower rates, that client has the ability to refinance out of that at some point.
Is it possible that here in 2025, we might kind of dip our toe into the 2008 problem or crisis back then? Are we seeing any similarities, or is that just a bunch of hot air?
Yeah, I mean, that would be more, I think Sherry would have a little bit more of a handling on that. I don't think we'll ever, knock on wood, get into that 2008 crisis where borrowers basically were underwater, where their house wasn't worth as much as they owe. I don't think we'll get into that crisis. I think what would help that is just having lower rates in some case. But personally, I don't think we'll see that time frame again. Knock on wood, hopefully we don't. I would love to see the 3-4% interest rate that we saw during COVID. It was just an opportunity where people had, I don't think I would ever in our lifetime see an interest rate of 2 to 2.5%. It was a great run.
What about downsizing and layoffs? Do you see the home marketplace changing because of job loss and job reductions and layoffs and all that kind of stuff? What?
Interest rates, obviously we talked about in the 10-year treasury is what really has a good indication of where rates are going to go. But one of the biggest indicators are job numbers, jobless claims. Right? So the more people that are unemployed, the job losses, unfortunately, it lowers interest rate, right? The uneasy or the uncertainty of what's going to happen. But, we have jobs numbers that come out that have a major impact on interest rates. So the more people are unemployed, the lower we're going to see interest rates in some cases.
The stock market's been fairly hot as of late. How does that play a role with people purchasing a home? The stock market, how much of a role does it play when you have somebody calling you to get some financing?
Yeah, the stock market, when the economy's showing signs of improvement and things are doing well, is when we start to see interest rates can sometimes, in some cases, rise, right? So negative history in the industry will lower rates, whereas positive stuff will will raise rates. The market's been this way for pretty long time. I mean, it's been it's been elevated. So we haven't seen a major change, but I think what will have a big impact on us is basically going to be the unemployment, but also I think when the current administration continues to put pressure on the Fed, and when the Fed changes over next year, when Powell moves on, I'm really curious to see who's going to take that spot in Powell's replacement. It's going to be interesting. So
are some people cashing out some of their holdings in their stock portfolio? Do you talk to people about where they get their funds, or is that part of the process that a mortgage broker typically always does, and find out where you're getting that cash from?
Yeah, so I talk to people all the time about putting cash down and so forth. Does it make sense to liquidate some of your portfolio? And really for me, that's a financial advisor's question. But a lot of times, when money was cheap, when money was 3% or 4%, I was advising people to put as little down as possible, right? Because you're borrowing at such a small clip. If you put down less than 20%, you have mortgage insurance. But when your rate's 3% and you add a little bit of mortgage insurance, it's not the end of the world, right? As rates are higher and elevated, I'm seeing more and more people get to that 20% down or greater, whether they go to their retirement. What a lot of people do is, the people are buying property without selling their current residence, because you can't put an offer in contingent on the sale of your house in this market. Very unlikely that any seller is going to say, hey, we'll accept your offer, even though that you have to sell your house, right? So the contingency offers are tough. So people were putting an offer in, holding on to their current house, buying the new one, then selling their departing residence. Now they have all this money in their hand, right? So what they do then, instead of doing a refinance, they do what's a lot of investors allow you to do, a recast. So after you sell your departing residence, you can give us a percentage of money. It's got to be $10,000 or greater, and we'll keep the same interest rate, lower your balance, reamortize your payment, and gives people the ability to buy with holding on to the other property.
All right, maybe one of the most important questions for Paul Scollage of Rate.com: blues, striper, fluke, kingfish. What's biting right now in Brigantine?
So you got a little bit of everything right now. I think on the surf, you got plenty of kingfish. You got spot. You have fluke. I think the bluefish are definitely something that are gone. They're moving their way up north. Stripers are gone. You won't see them until the fall.
It's a good season, though, huh? Good season, right?
It's tuna time. That's what we're going to be focusing on. So I'm looking forward to getting out and doing the Jimmy Johnson next week.
Very good. All right, Paul Scollage of Rate.com. Awesome. Find him. We'll talk to you soon, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll see you guys. Everybody. And we'll see everybody a little bit later. Let me turn this off. There you go.
Thanks. See you.